want to talk today about the story of Joseph. Speaking of for your goodness and how faithful God is. The purpose of the message is basically having hope throughout the entire process of God changing you and God doing what he's going to do in your life. All right, so let's just go ahead and do it. Genesis 37 and 3. It's the story of Joseph. Most of us know it, but I'm not quite sure when the last time we actually have looked at that story, when the last time we actually read it. It's a very touching story about something that happened to this brother. All right, so 37 and 3, I'm not sure if the screen is working, but okay, there it is right there. Now, one of the things that we'll find out is that we know in the story that Joseph had a dream, right? Remember, God spoke to him through a dream. Job, in the book of Job, 33 and 14 said that God does speak, now one way, now another, though man may not always perceive it. Well, this time he chose to speak through a dream. So let's talk about that. Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age. And he made a richly ornamented robe for him. Remember, we learned about this as a kid. You know, Joseph had the coat of many colors is what they called it. Something to make him stand out. Next verse. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." His brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of the dream and what he said, okay? So let's talk about what happened here for a second. Joseph had a dream that he was with his brothers. They were out doing work like they normally would. And the work that he produced literally stood upright. The sheaf of grain that they were binding literally stood upright while everybody else's sheaf bowed down to it. Now, I was doing some study from the Septuagint also in this, and the Septuagint said that they didn't just bow, they fell prostrate. And prostrate means that you can't get any lower. They laid with their face down totally flat to his. And his brothers, how were they supposed to take that? They didn't like that. They hated him. So, okay, we're supposed to bow down and serve you now? They hated him all the more for that. But one of the things that we knew, though, was that this was a God-given dream, was it not? This was something that God provided, right? Y'all with me? This was a God-given dream, right? So the thing is that Joseph, as soon as he received that dream, what did he do? He went and told his brothers. The dream was about them. And not only was the dream about them, it said they were going to serve him. So there's a problem with this, all right? Now, Joseph obviously didn't know any better, but it's something that we can learn from life for this. And the first thing is that what God tells you isn't for everybody. When he tells you something, the first thing you're supposed to do is not go and tell other people what your dream is, what your vision is, what God said that he's going to do for you. It's not for everyone. That's why God gave it to you. So, does Joseph learn? No, he doesn't learn. Because in verse 9, he had another dream. And what's the thing say? And he told it to his brothers. Listen, he said, "I had another dream. And this time the sun and the moon and the 11 stars were bowing down to me." Ooh, Joseph, you were conceited, dude. Ooh, just letting them know. Joseph didn't listen. So verse 10 says, when he told his father, as well as his brothers, even his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?" This is why you don't share your stuff with everybody. Because they will attempt to tear down what God said that he was going to do for you. Okay? So, let's move on. So, the brothers hated him. Let's see here. Go to the next verse. 11. Okay, his brothers were jealous of him, but the father kept the matter in mind. All right, so I'm not going to tell the story of Joseph in detail. We just don't have time for it. So I'll skip through and I'll pull out certain parts that I think are really good. So what happens is that Israel, Jacob, same person, sends Joseph to check on his brothers. He sends Joseph to Shechem. That's where he told his sons to go. Jacob told his sons, go and graze and flock over in Shechem. That's in verse 12. Where the boys and the flocks, they are supposed to be, in Shechem. Let's go to verse 14. He said to them, go and see if all is well with your brothers and with the flocks, and bring word back to me. Then he sent him off in the valley of Hebron. When Joseph arrived at Shechem, a man found him, Joseph, wandering around the fields and asked him, what are you looking for? He replied, I'm looking for my brothers. Can you tell me where they are grazing their flocks? They have moved from here. I heard them say, let's go to Dothan. Okay, hold on a second. Let's bring this back into what exactly is going on here. How many people in here have kids? A lot of hands. Don't see every hand, no, so let's do it this way. How many of you have been a kid? There we go. Now, you know, well, actually, let me ask the question this way. How many of you all actually have told your parents that you're going someplace, but you actually went somewhere else? We got some truth in here. Not everybody want to be truthful on a Sunday morning. Are your parents sitting next to you? What's going on? How many of you all told your parents you were going someplace, but went somewhere else? Oh, okay, let me ask the question this way. How many of you all went to where you told your parents were going to go, but conveniently went somewhere else without letting them know? There we go. Okay, all right, we got more hands here this time. Jacob didn't know where the sons were. They switched it up on him. So here's what happens. Jacob sends Joseph. Jacob didn't know what they were doing. He just said, hey, just go check on them. Jacob finds out they're in Dothan. All right. Why is this important? Shechem is a place that is designed for them to work. This is where they're to graze their fields. It was great for grazing. It had almost an unlimited water supply over there. It was perfect for it. That's why they were supposed to be there. Dothan, on the other hand, you didn't go there to graze sheep. You didn't go there to tend the flocks. What Dothan was hiring commerce. They have trades coming through there. They have stuff you could buy, stuff you could sell, all this other kind of thing, right? So let's ask the question again. How many of us, instead of going to work, went to the mall? Because that's essentially what these boys right here just did. They told their dad they were going somewhere else, and then went to a much rougher place where they could buy and sell and trade stuff. That's what boys do, right? And it would have worked. I think about the Scooby-Doo thing. They would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for Joseph. Because here he comes right now, and you know he's going to tell on. Now, here's the sad part, though. Verse 18. Now, Joseph found him near Dothan. When they saw him in the distance, this is the brothers seeing Joseph coming. Before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. This is their brother. And now they plotted to kill him because of all of that stuff that's been happening up to here. You know, and I mentioned this in the first service too, there are many teachers who actually compare Joseph to a type of Christ for all the stuff that he went through. And this was one of the things they were talking about. This is not something we're going to do today, but just as a thought, John 1:11 actually says this. It says that he came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. It's a comparison here to what happened. And actually, some of us have that same thing too. We come to those who are which our own. They don't receive us. We might have people in our family, our brothers, our sisters. They don't accept us because of the calling or the purpose that God has for us. It's a shame too, because we didn't do anything wrong. For whatever reason, they just don't like us. We just don't get along with them. We're in the room with them, and it's just a heat in there. You just feel it, you know? It's like some kind of pressure in there. But it's because what God got on you. That's what it is. So they plotted to kill him. All right? So, by plotting to kill Joseph, and these people working to do things against you, it's the second point I got for you today. And it says that people will try to cancel God's plan for you. Others will try to cancel God's plan for you. They will lie, they will cheat, they will talk about you, they will make up stuff, they will tell all your business, will do everything they can to sabotage what God's plan is for you. Let's look at this. Let's look at Psalm 37 and 12. And if you are looking at the board, I hope you're writing these down, because, I think there's some good stuff in here that's coming, but I'm not going back once we get there, okay? So you better get in there. The wicked plot against the righteous and gnash their teeth at them. But the Lord laughs at the wicked, for he knows that their day is coming. Psalm 37, 32. The wicked lie in wait for the righteous, seeking their very lives. But the Lord will not leave them in their power or let them be condemned when brought to trial. So regardless to what others try and do, your God's going to protect you. The protection is actually already around you. So Joseph's brothers wanted to kill him, all right? Now, I tried to think about this because I felt like killing him was such an extreme thing. Like, why do they want to kill him? So I started thinking to myself about why all of the many reasons that they would want to do it. By no means is it justified, but trying to think about why they could be so angry at him. And I came up with a few. This is all helping to set the narrative, okay? Here are a couple of reasons. Number one, Joseph was known to be the one to tell on his brothers. He was a tattletale. He was the youngest one. It says that in verse 2. Before we even really get a good understanding of who Joseph was. Oh, Joseph was one of Jacob's sons. He was 17 years old. And he brought a bad report about his brothers. It says that at the very beginning. So the Bible establishes that Joseph was somebody who would tell on somebody. You ever had that? There was sibling rivalry in kids. You know, like one of the kids does something bad in school. The one who didn't do it, that's the first thing they're going to say to the parents when they get in front of them. You ever had that before? You always hitting the other one like, don't say nothing. They're going to put it out there. And you don't like them because they do that. Always telling your business. The second one, their father, Israel, Jacob, already loved Joseph more than any of them. That's not me saying that. It's a fact. And it wasn't a secret either. He had a robe. He had an ornate robe. He had something that set him apart from everybody else. So every time those brothers saw Joseph coming, they saw the love that their father had for him that they didn't receive. What do they have on? I mean, probably just the blandest, dirty stuff that they may or may not have washed. But here's Joseph. Had on this special coat. Had on something different. Number three, like I said, Joseph probably was spoiled as a kid. He knew he was a favorite. How can you not know that? He's wearing the robe. This is the symbol of appreciation, the symbol of love. And he's 17 years old too. How can you keep that in a content way to say, oh, well, you know, my father loves us all the same? He knew that was a lie. He knew that his father loved him more. So how can he not be spoiled amongst that? He wasted no time telling his brothers of the dream. Another opportunity to show you guys are going to bow down to me. Both of them. Even look at the way they responded to him. Even Jacob. The way Jacob responded back to him as soon as he heard what the dream was. It was almost like, Jacob, here you go again. Shut up. You always talking about all of this stuff and people bowing down to you. It's not all about you. But he was still the favorite. How could he not hold on to that? So that was like number three. Number four. Okay, now this one's a little bit of a stretch here, but you got to think about this for a second. We know that those dreams were God-given, right? And the dreams were saying that the brothers would bow down to the son, right? From the brothers' perspective, even if those dreams were true, then it looks like God himself even loves Joseph over the rest of us. Do y'all see that? See, we all think about it from Joseph's perspective. What if you were one of the other brothers? So now, not only does my father love him more than me, my God loves him more than me. Doesn't that kind of paint a little bit of a different narrative here? It's almost like everything is about this one boy. If we take him out, something else going to have to happen. Maybe we can be the favorite. Maybe I can be the favorite. Sarah, maybe I can have a child through such and such. Maybe I can be this. Maybe I can be that. So, back to the story. Joseph knows his brothers are not where they say they're going to be. What's he going to go back and tell Jacob? Ooh, daddy. They are not where they told you they were going to be. You are not going to believe where they are. So, okay, let's go back to verse 19. Here comes that dreamer they said. Next verse. Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dream. See, you understand what's happening. They want to kill him, hide his body, and then lie about what happened to him. All of his brothers are saying this. Next verse. When Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. Let's not take his life, he said. Next verse. Don't shed any blood. Throw him into this cistern here in the desert, but don't lay a hand on him. Reuben's the only one with some sense, at least for this moment, out of all the rest of them. Now, Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. Okay, so Reuben is the oldest. Joseph at this time was the youngest. Reuben felt a responsibility to keep everything together because he's the oldest. When you're out, okay, if you have siblings, if you have brother or sister, when you're out, usually the parents hold you responsible for what the rest of them do. How many of you all in here are the oldest in your group? A few of them, okay. So when you all are out, if the kids went nuts, all of y'all got in trouble, right? All of y'all got in trouble. Because the oldest was responsible to look out for everybody else. And so therefore they had to listen just as well. All right, so Reuben says, okay, look, we're not going to shed any blood. We're going to throw him in here, and we just going to call it that. So they couldn't kill him because the oldest said, this is not what we're going to do. Next verse. Oh, well, actually, okay, I'll just read it from here. So when Joseph came up, his brothers stripped him of the robe that they had on, and they threw him in the cistern. Same thing Reuben wanted them to do. And so as they were sitting there eating, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Now, verse 26. Judah said to his brothers, Judah is one of the other brothers, what will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? This is so weird, their family. Watch this. Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. And his brothers agreed. So his brother says to the rest of them, it would be horrible to kill him. He is our brother. Let's just sell him. After all, he's our brother. Let's sell him. And then the crazy part is that his brothers agreed. They was like, okay, yeah, let's do that. Next verse. So when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph up out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites who took him to Egypt. Joseph is now sold. What did Joseph do wrong? He told his dream? That's what he did wrong, huh? He existed, okay. What has Joseph done wrong at this point? Oh, what has he done to constitute an argument between death and being sold? Let's put it that way. Who is he killed or who is he, stole from and all this kind? He hadn't done anything. All right, so verse 29, when Reuben returned to the cistern and saw that Joseph was not there, he tore his clothes. Next verse says, he went back to his brothers and said, the boy isn't there. Where can I turn now? So, okay, this part right here is important, all right? Reuben came back, and he was distraught because he couldn't find Joseph. Why did Reuben not know where Joseph was? Think about it. Why did Reuben not know where Joseph was? I hear it over here. Let's see. Why did Reuben not know? When the decision was made on what to do with him, Reuben wasn't there. He wasn't there. He wasn't there. So now, the next oldest is in charge, who obviously didn't have Reuben's mind in terms of keeping for the rest of the family. So they sold Joseph off. All right. Let's see here. Next verse. Then they got Joseph's robe, slaughtered the goat, dipped the robe in the blood. Y'all see how crazy this is? I mean, they're not just covering up a lie. Somebody just didn't just write on the wall and they just gonna cover it up. There's a child missing. And they trying to cover it up this way. They got then they took the ornamented robe back to their father and said, we found this. Examine it to see whether it is your son's robe. They were very careful in what they said. They thought this out. All right. Next verse. He recognized it. Jacob recognized it and said, "It is my son's robe. Some ferocious animal has devoured him." Y'all see how they played him? You know how they talk about kids can sometimes play their parents? Perfect example. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces. Now, did they lie to him? Oh, y'all arguing now. Okay, did they lie to him? Okay, all right. What did they say? They said, they said, "Is this your son's robe? This looks like Joseph's. This is what we found." All right. And then Jacob went everywhere else with that. So they left Jacob to come up with his own response. And then they were all back in the back looking just like this. That's none of my business. So they sold their brother and tricked their father into thinking that he had been killed. Ooh, this is a dysfunctional family. Good Lord. Chapter 39. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, brought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. So now Joseph has been bought again. All right? Bought by Potiphar. This is important right here. The Lord was with Joseph, and he prospered. And he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. His Lord, Potiphar, knew that the Lord was with him. And whatever he did, the Lord was making prosperous in his hands. Now, throughout all this happening to Joseph, at this particular point right here, we can look at this and we can see the next piece of information is very important to the rest of us. Is that even though he was there, or even how it applies to us, let me do it that way. No matter where we are in life right now, your current situation cannot change God's promise. No matter how bad the circumstances seem, God has already found your way out. He has already started working your way out. Psalm 46:11. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Selah. Think about it. Isaiah 8, verse 9. Raise the war cry, you nations, and be shattered. Listen, all you distant lands. Prepare for battle and be shattered. Prepare for battle and be shattered. Devise your strategy, but it will be thwarted. Propose your plan, but it will not stand, for God is with us. This is what you tell the enemy when you feel like he's coming against you. Isaiah 41:10. You know this one. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. So back to Joseph. He was a slave at this point. But even though he was a slave, that didn't change the fact that God's hand was on him. And that didn't change the fact that everything that he touched prospered. Now, he rose up in the ranks of Potiphar's house. Remember, he became kind of like over everything that Potiphar was handling, handled all his affairs and things, until one time, Potiphar had a little dysfunctional family too. Because he had a wife. And she was looking at Joseph. She had been watching him for a long time. And she wondered what it would be like to spend some time with him. She probably wondered that a couple times. To a point to where he's walking through the house in his cloak, probably had his chest all out, just walking through there with just this little thing around him like a bath towel to her, right? And she sees that and she was like, I dropped something. Can you come over here and pick this up? And he walks over there and she grabs his cloak, say, look, I want you to stay right here. And he runs out with this cloak in her hands. And because she is now rejected, she makes up a lie. Says that he tried to rape her. Y'all know the story? If you don't know it, go back and read it. There's so much in there. She makes up a lie, says that he tried to rape her. And so what happens? Now Joseph is thrown into prison. Now here's a question. What did Joseph do wrong? If anything, he chose the right way. And he ended up in prison. Whew. So you have Joseph, who was the favorite son, and through no wrongdoing of his, became a slave. And then even while he was a slave, he ends up getting locked up and becomes a prisoner now. Can't really go much lower than that. In the jail cell. And we know while Joseph was in the jail cell, he ran into a couple people. Some people in Pharaoh's court. Ran into the baker and the cupbearer. See, what happened was that they made Pharaoh upset, and they ended up getting thrown in prison as well. But see, Joseph was doing so well in prison, even though he had to stay in prison, he was now over the prison. He was a respected one. He was the one that basically had duties as in like somebody like a normal guard, but he was just a prisoner. So when these guys come in, they sit down and they have a conversation with Joseph, and they have these dreams. Joseph interprets the dreams, tells them a little bit about themselves, and these men know that Joseph has a gift from God. Joseph tells them, he says, hey, when you go back to Pharaoh, well, he was talking to the cupbearer because you know the baker didn't make it, all right? When you go back to when you go back to Pharaoh, tell him about me. Let him know like what I can do. Cupbearer goes back, forgets about Joseph. Joseph is in prison a whole another 2 years until Pharaoh finally has a dream. Remember this how this works. Now, when Pharaoh had the dream, the cupbearer finally remembered Joseph. Where was Joseph? Joseph was in prison. But you had somebody in a high place now remember him. Which brings up my next point. That even in the middle of your trial, God can open new doors for you. Even in the lowest of places that you can be, you never know who you might run into that could be next to the king. You never know who you might run into that might be over the person looking for that job you're looking for right now. You never know who that person is. So Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dreams and became the second most important man in Egypt. From the moment Pharaoh found out about him, Joseph went to go see him. Joseph interpreted the dreams. Boom, prison down here, now the second highest man in all the land. You see how that thing catapulted all of a sudden, just because he was in the right place at the right time. Now, here's the way the story went. The dreams that Pharaoh had, basically, when they were interpreted, Joseph said, okay, there's going to be a period of 14 years. Divided into two groups of 7, all right? You're going to have 7 years of plentiful harvest. Everything is going to go perfectly. We're going to grow everything. Anything you need, we're going to have it. It's going to happen like that for 7 years. And at the beginning of that 8th year, it's going to go away. Everything is going to be barren. So what I suggest we do is that during the 7 years, let's collect as much as possible. Let's keep all of this to where when we move into the time when there's a famine, we have more than enough. Pharaoh says, man, where can we find somebody with your logic in all of Egypt? Come right here and be my second man. So what happens is God revealed to him. God revealed to him what was going to happen. Yeah, it was Pharaoh's dream, but it was an insight that God gave Joseph that allowed them to figure out what was going to happen. So here's a little part. So they started storing up so much. I'm just going to put this one scripture up here, Genesis 41 and 49, just as a example here. Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain, like the sand of the sea. Like the sand of the sea. It was so much that he stopped keeping records because it was beyond measure. They were running out of paper to put this stuff on in terms of how much they got. That's how much they had. They don't know. That's how much they had. They don't know. Now, Genesis, let's see, okay, when the famine happened, only Egypt was prepared for everything. Only Egypt. Because of Joseph, only Egypt was prepared for everything. Genesis 41:56. When the famine had spread over the whole country, Joseph opened, now watch how this happens too. Joseph opened the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians. Now, there's something very, 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 very interesting right there. He sold grain back to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout Egypt. Joseph figured out how he could make some money. He made it for him and for Pharaoh. So due to what God gave him, everybody had to come to him to get it. He started making money for not only just himself, but for Pharaoh and all of Egypt as well. He increased Egypt's value, and all of the world began to have a need for what Joseph could provide. You put us in there with us. If we walk in what God has for us, if we don't get discouraged and allow him to make the change in us that we want, this is the next point. With his favor, you can change more than you thought possible. I would say more than when you thought possible, because no matter where our vision is in our mind, God's got infinitely more than that. Infinitely more than that. He can spark something in you that will draw multitudes to you. Not for a desire, but for a need. These people had to go to Joseph, or else they were going to starve. They had to go to him. So never lose hope that God's got a better place for you than where you are today. Never think that you can't be in a greater place. So Joseph is doing all well and wonderful and everything, but he still got his brothers and his family, and they are actually learning that Egypt has food. They're starting to starve now. So in verse 19, he sends some of his sons to go and buy some. Now, Jacob says, go and buy some grain. We got to have food. This famine has swept across the world, and everybody but Egypt is needing food. So he sends them. So chapter 42, verse 6. Now Joseph at this time was the governor of the land. Look at that. The one who sold grain to all of its people. So when Joseph's brothers arrived, they bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. Oh, y'all getting it? Okay. Now, they didn't just bow, because I looked this up in the Septuagint also. They used the same word. They prostrated themselves in front of Joseph. What does that mean? They laid on their chest, feet straight out, head to the ground. If they breathing in dirt. That's how low they got. That's how low they got. Now, that wasn't the first time they did it either. They also bowed down in chapter 43, verse 26, and also in chapter 44, verse 14. Oh, there they go. Okay, yeah, they bowed down before him. And then the other one's chapter 44, verse 14. Brothers came in, they threw themselves to the ground before him. Okay, so the dream is coming true. But see, now what happens is that Joseph recognized them, but they didn't know who Joseph was. They didn't, as far as they knew, Joseph either could have been dead or a slave somewhere else. They did not expect him to be the man that was providing what they needed, the governor of all of Egypt, now holding on to what they needed. It's the last thing they expected. God had a plan. So Joseph put them through the ringer, and we'll just kind of go ahead and speed through this a little bit. He terrified them with thoughts of death. Joseph had a little fun with them. He kept calling them spies, and they were like, no, you're going to kill us. He was like, no, you guys are spies. Who was in your family, and blah, blah, blah. And, they had Benjamin at that time, the youngest, now youngest brother. They said, well, Benjamin's not there. Jacob, let me back up a little bit. When Jacob sent the brothers to Egypt to get the food, he would not let Benjamin go. I've already had something happen to my youngest. Now that I got Benjamin, I am not going to let anything happen to him. He stays here. The rest of you all go and get the grain. So Joseph finds out about this, and what he does is he sends them back to get Benjamin. I will know that you all are not spies when you bring your youngest brother to me. He's getting them back, y'all. He's getting them back right here. And to make sure that they came back, he took Simeon. He took Simeon. He didn't take Reuben. He took Simeon. Remember earlier when I said that they decided to sell him, Reuben wasn't there. Simeon was the one that could control if they took him or not. So now Joseph doesn't take Reuben, he takes Simeon. Bounds him up right there, the same way that they bound Joseph up to sell him off. He bound Simeon right there in front of the rest of them. But see, they didn't know what was going on. They didn't get it. Bound Simeon up right then and there and said, okay, you go and get Benjamin. And until you do, he's going to stay just like this. The guys went home. They told Jacob. And Jacob was like, man, what are y'all getting into? He said, so not only do you not bring back anything, one of my other sons is gone, and you telling me I got to send my last. Y'all, Jacob is going through. As a father, can you imagine hearing this? You've already been, now, at the time, you didn't know, but, one of your sons has allegedly been eaten by something. When you sent them off to go check on the brothers, then you sent the rest of them off. One of them was captured, and now they're saying they won't let him go until the youngest one now goes. There's a lot of mental anguish going on right here. So much so that Jacob didn't want them to go. Reuben had to plead with him. If you don't let him go with us, they're not going to let Simeon go. Jacob had a hard time with that. Even Judah, the one who said, hey, look, let's throw him in the system in the first place. Judah said, look, let me be responsible for him. Let me be responsible for him. If something happens to him, you can hold it over me forever. And only under that does Jacob finally say, okay, you know what? You can go back. So when they finally get back, Joseph got a plan for this too. Joseph made it look like Benjamin stole something. Y'all remember the story, right? The whole thing with the cup and the sack and all this other kind of stuff. So Joseph made now it look like Benjamin stole something. And now Benjamin was going to end up being a slave to Egypt while the rest of the brothers go back with the grain and everything. All the brothers are going through it. They was like, man, we can't take no more of this, man. This is too much. This is way too much. Because they still don't recognize Joseph. He's putting them through all of this stuff. And in Judah, right then and there, actually, let's right here. Yeah, here it is. While Joseph was still in the house, when Judah and his brothers came in, they threw themselves to the ground before him. This is when Judah now is pleading, like Joseph, look, well, not Joseph, like governor of Egypt. Please do not do this. If we go back home without our youngest, this will kill our father. The anguish from this will kill him outright. He can't take this. Next verse. Joseph said to this, what is this you have done? Don't you know a man like me can find out things by divination? And he's talking about Benjamin. Go next verse. What can we say, my lord? Judah replied. What can we say? How can we prove our innocence? Now, of course, the brothers had done nothing wrong at this point, but now they're getting a taste to see what happens when you frame somebody else and they didn't do anything wrong. How can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered your servant's guilt. We are now my Lord's slaves. We ourselves and the one who was found to have the cup. He's talking about Benjamin. Move on. But Joseph said, far be it from me to do such a thing. Only the man who was found to have the cup will become my slave. Benjamin again. The rest of you go back to your father in peace. Now, here's where it starts getting really, really touchy. So I'm going to slow down right here just for a moment. Okay, let's go on to the next verse. Then Judah went up to him and said, please, my Lord. Y'all get what's happening right now, right? Please, my Lord, let your servant speak a word to my Lord. Do not be angry with your servant, though you are equal to Pharaoh himself. He's trying to talk him up. He was like, look, we cannot let this happen. Next verse. My Lord asked his servants, do you have a father or a brother? This is Joseph. He's saying that Joseph, you asked us this. You asked us these questions, and we answered. We have an aged father. There is a young son born to him in his old age. His brother is dead, and he is the only one of his mother's sons left. Remember, the brother is dead, talking about Joseph. He's telling the governor now that Joseph is dead. He's talking to Joseph, telling Joseph that he's dead. And he's the only one of his mother's sons left, talking about Benjamin. And his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, this is Judah saying, you said to us, bring him down to me so I can see him for myself. Next verse. And we said to my Lord, the boy cannot leave his father. If he leaves him, the father will die. Next one. But you told your servants, unless your youngest brother comes down, you will not see my face again. Go. Which means that they couldn't get any food either. When we went back to your servant, my father, we told him what my Lord had said. Then our father said, go back and buy a little more food. But we said we cannot go down. Only if our youngest brother is with us will we go. Again, Jacob is not wanting Benjamin to go. But they say if Benjamin does not go, we will not be able to buy anything. All right, next verse. Your servant, my father, said that to us. You know that my wife bore me 2 sons. Okay, let me see here. Let me see if we can speed this up a little bit. All right, okay, go ahead and just go to chapter 45. You don't have to go through the whole thing. Judah made the biggest plea ever. I mean, he laid it all out there. It was really touching. And then this is what happens. Joseph could no longer control himself. And let's see here, before all his attendants, and he cried out, have everyone leave my presence. So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. Next verse. And he wept. This is Joseph, wept, cried, wept. He didn't shed a tear. He wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him. And Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still living? But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified of this presence. Hold on a second. Let me put something in, let me explain something here that doesn't show itself in how fast I ran through this. Joseph was 17 years old when he was sold into slavery. All right? He was a slave to Potiphar, and he was in the prison. Now, we don't exactly know how long he was in Potiphar's house versus the time that he was in prison. But altogether, that was 13 years. He was 30 years old before he even saw Pharaoh. So from 17 to 30, somebody owned him. Why? For nothing. What did Joseph do wrong to where he spent almost half the life he lived at 17 being owned by somebody else? What did he do wrong? Y'all are thinking about it. What did he do wrong? What did Joseph do wrong? Nothing. I'm hearing a few people say that. The rest of y'all think he did something wrong? Told his dream? Is there anything wrong with that? I mean, if God give you something, if you shared, is that a crime? It shouldn't be, right? So for 13 years, he was either owned or in prison. He was 30 when Pharaoh made him the overseer, when he interpreted the dreams. Now, he was 39 when his brothers first came to Egypt. Reason we know that is because it was 7 years of famine, 7 years of harvest, then 7 years of famine. But the Bible says that the brothers showed up after the second year in the famine, which meant that it was 9 more years. So he was 39 years old. So the last time he saw his brothers, they sold him into slavery. 22 years passed by before they saw him again. How many times can you imagine Joseph thought about why he was being owned? That if they did not sell me into slavery, this would have never happened. How many times would he have said, while I'm in prison right now? How much anger would he have had towards his brothers? How much anger would you have had towards your family? I see some people shaking their heads, but everybody look like they want to be holy. Oh, well, we will forgive. Oh, yeah. 50 years in prison. Oh, yeah, that's nothing, forever eternity in heaven, right? 22 years. It's been that long. So he said right here, I am Joseph. Is my father still living? He wept. He cried. They looking at the governor of Egypt, not knowing it's his brother, just start crying all of a sudden. Man, what's wrong with this dude? And then he says, I'm Joseph. They scared him. I told you, they thought Joseph could even have been dead. They even told him that Joseph was dead. Next verse. Then Joseph said to his brothers, come close to me. When they had done so, he said, I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. Next verse. And now, and this is the most touching part of the story. If we got emotional people, if you read this in its entirety, this is where you get ready to lose it. And now, do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. Y'all read that for yourself real quick. Another translation says, for 2 years now, there's been famine in the land. And for the next 5 years, there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So out of all the things that Joseph could have done, he could have killed them on the spot, but he chose to forgive them. What does he mean by a remnant? What does he mean by I was sent here to save lives? That's why God sent me ahead of you. Here's the thing. The famine was coming. The famine was coming. Now, all of this evil that went on, even though God didn't do it, he allowed it to happen because he knew that that was the way to get Joseph in Egypt. Because he knew that one day Jacob's family, The family that he promised Abraham that would be 1,000 generations would need food one day. And if they can't eat, they're going to die. So look at how Joseph became the savior of not only just his brothers, but all of Egypt because of the insight that he got from God. So, what I'll say with you as we get ready to close is this. Do not be discouraged based on your current situation. Don't be dismayed by your current position. Don't be down because of the way that things look. God is fighting your battle. And as long as you stay in him, his plan for you will come to pass. Nothing can touch you. God created you the head and not the tail. God created you to be the first and not the last. God created everything that you touch to prosper. God created you to be special and different from everybody else. He's got something for you that nobody else has. So trust him, because with him, all things are possible. Now, I will leave you with this very last scripture. This is one from Isaiah. And this is one for encouragement right here. Isaiah 41:10. Listen to this. Because we're not going to just stop at 10. We're going to read just a little bit further. So do not fear. Listen to this. This is God talking to you. This is not God just speaking. Apply this to your situation. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. You think about your position right now. Think about what you're going through. Think about whatever dungeon or whatever prison or whatever slave you might be to somebody else right now. I will strengthen you and I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Next verse. All who wage against you will surely be ashamed and disgraced. Those who oppose you will be as nothing and perish. Next verse. Though you search for your enemies, look at this, you will not find them. Those who wage war against you will be as nothing at all. For I am the Lord, your God, who takes hold of your right hand and says to you, do not fear, I will help you. Next one. Do not be afraid, O worm Jacob, O little Israel, for I, look at this, myself will help you. Now, listen to that right there. God didn't say, I will make angels to have ways for you, or I will breathe a word that does something. He says, I myself will help you, declares the Lord, your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. So if you ever wondered how to get God on the scene, understand he's already there. All right. Understand that your position is being changed. Just because you might be in a position right now of laying the furthest you can get. Remember what happened to Joseph being in prison. He moved rapidly because he could interpret one dream that somebody else had. You never know what God is going to do with you. But you won't get it unless you give everything to him. Allow him to lead. Allow him to have it. Allow him to have it. I mean, I don't know any other way to say it than that. Allow him to have it. So, in closing, understand that God has given you a purpose and a destiny. A purpose and a destiny. It's not to watch other people excel in theirs. I can tell you that. He's given you a purpose and a destiny. And the best thing you can do with your life is to find out what it is and walk in that thing. All right, y'all. That's it.